In breaking news right now, we're here on CBS Sports HQ, and the breaking news is that the NFL, and not a surprise at all, has decided to uphold the Myles Garrett suspension. You'll recall Myles Garrett was suspended indefinitely, which means for the rest of the regular season, for the rest of the postseason, but indefinitely doesn't mean forever. It means that he's eligible to apply to the NFL for reinstatement for the beginning of next regular season. What's interesting also is that the arbitrator and the person who basically heard the penalty said Pouncey, who had 3 games, is now down to 2 games. But interestingly enough, he will still miss the rematch, which will happen in 2 weeks between the Browns and the Steelers. Why was there such a need to get this taken care of now, and why is it not a surprise in the least that Myles Garrett's suspension was upheld? The NFL had a huge incentive to get this out of the news cycle. Just today, news broke that Myles Garrett, during the course of his appeal, brought up the possibility, if not the absolute likelihood, that Mason Rudolph used a racial slur during the fracas, which incited Garrett to rip off his helmet and hit Rudolph over the head with it. The problem with saying that he used a racial slur is that now all sorts of players on the Browns and Steelers have come out and said, that's the first we're hearing of it. We didn't know anything about it. Well, the rule for a player when they get suspended and they go in for an appeal is the judge is going to look at all of the evidence that surrounds the event. Are there any mitigating circumstances that could make the penalty given to the player too strong? There's 2 parties at this appeal. It's actually not Garrett, believe it or not. You've got the Players Association representing Garrett, and you also have the NFL. And during that hearing, word came out in testimony that Garrett said, the reason I did this is there was a racial slur. That caused an immediate response from Mason Rudolph and his attorney, who denied that that ever took place. So far, only 1 player is on the record saying that it may have, or if it did, if Garrett says it, I believe it, and that's Odell Beckham Jr., again, trying to make himself the news. But all the other players have come out very specifically and said, no, we haven't heard. Why is that a big deal to the NFL? Because it's one thing when they're dealing with violence. You know that they've got violence during the game. They've got violence after the whistle's been blown. What the NFL does not want to deal with is anything racially related. So if you're going to play the race card, you better have evidence to back it up. And it became very clear that Myles Garrett did not have that evidence. Even if he did, my argument is that the suspension would still be upheld because this is something the NFL and the union is not going to fight for. When you've got a players' union and a league going head-to-head when it comes to player suspensions, normally what happens is what happened with Pouncey. When you're suspended 3 games, they make it 2. When an MLB player is suspended 5 games, they make it 4. 10 games, they make it 8. There's always room in there for an independent person to bring it down. But in this situation, the union was not going to fight on behalf of Garrett. The union was not going to choose to die on the hill of Myles Garrett and what he did during that game and the type of publicity it has brought to the NFL. And that is all relevant information. And then Garrett made it worse by playing that card. Who were his advisors, and why would they tell him to do that? The answer is they thought that that was his best opportunity to take away the word indefinite from the suspension. It's always better when you don't have to apply for reinstatement. Just ask Pete Rose. You want the ability to have a set number of games. Just the regular season. Just the regular season plus the postseason. Just 20 games. Whatever the number is for a player, that's how to get his career back on track. Problem with Myles Garrett is there's no interest in either the union or the Browns or the NFL in seeing Myles Garrett's career get back on track. They're trying to get as far away from this situation as possible. So what happens now? The NFL and the players' union and all the players are going to be instructed on what they should and should not say regarding this situation. The NFL wants this to end. They want the focus to be right back on the field. They are going to quash this entire racial slur situation, and the news cycle, it came out now, and it's already going to be gone. No matter what you hear on Twitter or social media, the players are going to be told that's enough. That's what we would say in our clubhouse once suspensions were handed out and appeals were heard, whether it's on steroids or because of a fight. You stop the story cold in its tracks. What's Myles Garrett's next move? He's got to decide exactly what he's going to do when it comes to repenting. Does he do it with Rudolph? Does he start some sort of charitable endeavor between the Browns and the Steelers? Wouldn't that be a cold day if those two teams started working together? But something like that is what Garrett and his advisors have to have happen. Because when he applies for reinstatement, the thing that's critical is what level of remorse has he shown and what steps has Myles Garrett taken to show that that was an isolated incident. Because the NFL has zero interest in anything like this again from any player. And given the way Myles Garrett acted during his suspension hearing, bringing up not just the racial slur, but trying to say that what he did was the same as when another helmet incident took place, where actually there was zero connection made with the other player's head, that was bad advice given to him by his advisors. He should have sat in front of the arbitrator and simply apologized and said it was out of character, called in character witnesses on his behalf who could have submitted written statements that could have been a part of the evidentiary record, and left it at that. Instead, Garrett went a completely different direction.